Right, for this week's update, just popping into BattleLab for a couple of things. Then I'm going to interview Sharman about war gaming, whatever that is. And he better not quote Sun Tzu's Art of War, or else I'm out. See you in a bit. Hey everyone, this is Jordan, who is the new front of house at the BattleLab. So he's the main man to see about everything, what's happening, access to Wi-Fi, and so on. Right, say hello, Jordan. Next Tuesday on the 11th at 11 a.m., the Southwest Regional Defence and Security Cluster are hosting an online cybersecurity event. So I'm going to put the link into there, and actually you can sign up to their newsletter and become a member to keep in touch with the latest happenings. So yeah, Southwest Regional Defence and Security Cluster happening here at the Defence BattleLab. As always with Mr. Sharman, it has to be coffee at Evocatus. There you go. Before we start this interview, you have to have coffee. Now that you're not mid-Jaffa cake, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Sharman, and I run Evocatus Consulting here in the Dorset Innovation Park at Winfrith. That's Socks and Spice. They're here most of the time. And we are a wargaming-based consultancy.
So wargaming isn't just playing Risk and all that kind of stuff. There's something more to it, right?
Yeah. So wargaming is one of those words that we who do it know what we mean, and the problem is it can mean different things to different people, particularly if they've not come across it before. Essentially, I heard a really good quote this week actually down at Sandhurst. There was an army symposium on wargaming, and what the suggestion there was that wargaming is simply a tool that helps us understand the problems better and perhaps the solutions as well. And so, sure, in a defense setting, it is called wargaming because it's stepping through the stages of a plan before you then go into action to understand where you may have left holes or you might have not seen opportunities. But essentially, for me, it's anything from a tabletop exercise to discuss problems rather than just assuming it's all going to work, through to right at the other end with highly complicated simulations that look through the problem and understand where it's going to go. And it is all sorts of things to all sorts of people. Analytical wargaming to really understand problems for big organizations that need to think collectively and collaboratively is one end of it, but also training. The more time you spend doing wargaming, particularly with proper adversarial play going on, the more you understand that you can't just make a plan and it's going to roll out, and that actually it's about understanding the unforeseen and what might go wrong.
So there is pushing things around the tabletop, but also the software in the background. So what's the kind of blend and use cases of that?
Yeah, so within defense wargaming in particular, this is something we're going to be doing next week for DSTL. This is actually ripped straight off YouTube and shows a game called Combat Mission Strike Force 2. We use that as a way to intelligently run through how different things might work. So next week we're looking at remote autonomous systems, particularly use cases of what you might do with an uncrewed platform and how that might change the way we fight in the future. That's obviously a relatively high-tech version that is quite time-intensive and is absolutely about me working through the problem using a set of simulation with an AI adversary. 2 weeks ago, we were working on a table this size with large chunks of Eastern Europe, looking at how whole divisions might fight if they were a certain size and shape against particular enemies. So, and all of those create different opportunities in terms of learning. One of my favourite phrases is about models, and I think it's George Box who said that all models are wrong. Some models are useful. So it's various different models that are wrong in different ways, but in the ways that they're right allow us to really understand problems in a way that we can't just by looking at it from the outside.
Last time I was here, you told me there's a reason why these tables are the size of these tables. Why is that?
So these are my wargaming tables, which I have made for me by the Southampton Wood Recycling Company, which is a a not-for-profit out of Southampton. They're recycled scaffolding boards that have been turned into useful stuff, as are their benches. And the logic is that, I mean, they're 1 meter by 2 meters, and the logic is that they can't be any bigger because you can only just reach the middle. If you have a bigger, a bigger table for wargaming might be great, but you're not going to reach the middle, so you're not going to be able to actually access all of the space for playing games on. So they are, yeah, bespoke, recycled, brilliant.
So when you're doing the wargaming thing, as a bigger city, I'm trying to learn more. Obviously, you try to validate different scenarios, what's going to happen, but how do you introduce pressure onto the people to make sure they are pressure tested as well as the fan?
So those sound like different games. So a game that is there to stress test a plan needs to focus on the detail of the plan and where the plan can go wrong. In order to do that properly, actually, we need to create an environment of relative psychological safety where everybody playing is happy to have their work criticised and pulled apart. Because if you've made the plan, nobody likes to have that torn apart. So establishing environments for psychological safety and that sort of stuff in order to achieve that is absolutely key. But you're absolutely right. Wargames can also be used to apply pressure, but that tends to be about coming up with the right scenario that is complex enough and ambiguous enough that there really is not even 3 right answers. There's 17 right answers, and putting pressure on people that way. I mean, I should make the point as well. This isn't just a defence activity. So another sort of ongoing client we have is Mercer Financial, which is I think they mostly focus on pensions and that sort of side of life. And the activity we do for them is scenario description. So getting people to imagine themselves in a particular circumstance with likely consequences that they can then talk through into a scenario. And with colleagues from the Film Guy is my in-house film and TV crew, we put stuff together so that they can support their events and their conferences with decent high quality stuff that's been made specifically for them, that just delivers information in a way that they're used to. We're all used to seeing stuff on screens rather than being handed a piece of paper and asked to read it. So all of that, for me, is tied up in wargaming. It's about putting people in a scenario and in a game and thinking about it rather than being on the outside. I mean, those bookcases there are full of miniature wargaming rules and Dungeons and Dragons. And actually, role playing for me is absolutely on the same spectrum as wargaming, because we don't call it role playing, because you know why everybody calls it role playing in the workplace, because the minute you mention role playing, everybody rolls their eyes. But actually, when you stop calling it role playing and make it a game where it's a tabletop exercise and you play a part, that is role playing, and you learn so much more about the problems that you're facing if you can put yourself in that, particularly if you can put yourself in a stakeholder's position or a competitor's position or any of those other things.
I've been to workshops where they just get a load of Lego out and you just not play with the Lego. You do play with the Lego, but that's the medium to kind of open up creativity questions and and be less stuffy and people on guard or whatever. I think there's wargaming, the safe environment you talked about, that leads to that.
So again, it depends on what it's for. So the best role-playing game that we call the war game I've ever done was for a large blue chip company, and it was the beginning of a change management program. So if anybody who's read anything about change management knows that the hardest thing is to make the change stick.
You're not going to mention Sun Tzu's Art of War, are you?
I was going to try and avoid it. But essentially, it was a company who were doing a massive restructuring for very good reasons. Had the global team had turned up to the European regional team, told them that change was required, and told them how it was going to happen, and had been met by a lot of people sat there like this, going, "When are you getting back on your plane?" and disappearing again. They got us in along with some Dutch allies of ours, and we ran a war game in Buenos Aires and in Sao Paulo, which was basically a film-based role-playing game, taking them through stages of what could happen in the next 5 years, with a set of victory conditions. This is what we want everybody to try and achieve, and they then spent a whole day in this environment playing the roles around the problem to really unpack it and understand why the need for change. And the next morning, when they rolled the same slides on changes required and this is how it's going to happen, they were met with people actively engaged with, right, how do we do this? This has got to be the way forward, rather than those sort of sullen, when are you getting back on the plane and letting me get on with my job? It's that buy-in type stuff that you can, for me, I don't think you can reach those bits of people's heads just by having them sit and watch something. They have to be involved. I mean, I know that there are different opinions on learning styles and whether they are valid as a way of approaching things or not. But in my experience, there are people who are better at reading books and will take the information from that. Some people at watching screens and watching stuff, and people who are much happier getting into a problem and engaging with other people.
So you're a tenant on the Dorset Innovation Park. So why did you decide to move here, and what benefits have you got from being here?
So this is half my working life. The other half is with the Wessex Yeomanry in Bovington, which is all of 2 miles from here. So when the opportunity opened up to come down here, with the BattleLab opening up as well, I was getting to that stage of the business where I wanted a place to work from rather than just sort of working from the back bedroom, and the sort of ecosystem down here and being part of that would just is the kind of thing that I want to be part of. Being at the BattleLab but not in the BattleLab is really handy, because people know we're here, but it means that I've got a place where I can crack on with my own stuff. We can run our own events separately, but it's very, very straightforward, whether it's on the military side or supporting defence, to put them in touch with the right people over there. And again, just wander over there every now and again for a coffee and see who's in and what's going on, because networking is how we do our BD.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, and Sharman from Evocatus Consulting. So this DVCV has learned a lot about wargaming, although it's a bit wargaming still, but I'm getting there. So bye everyone, see you on the next one.